This past New Year's, I decided to spend it with my really close friend Amir. We spent the entire weekend laughing and joking, listening to our favorite music, and of course, waiting to watch the infamous ball drop. The time is 11:58 p.m. Our anticipation grows stronger as Anderson Cooper guides us towards a year of new beginnings. 5 seconds remain as I gear up to unleash a load of excitement. Three, two, one. Happy New Year. I took a second and I stepped back to examine the room and embrace everyone that was around. When suddenly, I came to a shocking realization. Although we were all unified inside this one moment of joy, Amir's brother, Aman, sat on the outside of our jubilation acting as a spectator. And that's when it all clicked for me. He had been a spectator this entire time. How could I have not noticed? He spectated as we danced and sang at the top of our lungs. He spectated as we shared countless laughs and jokes. And in this moment, he spectated once again as we took for granted an ability that everyone does not get to bask in. How would you feel if every time you sat with a group of people, you were treated like your entire existence was invisible? But that feeling of social suicide is the harsh reality for a lot of the hearing impaired. American Sign Language, or ASL, is something that most hearing people are oblivious to, thus creating a gap in the united working community. Living in a world full of people but feeling isolated because of a language barrier is no way to live. While you are having a good time listening to your favorite tunes with your friends, keep in mind that there are certain social settings that make it really hard for deaf people to accommodate, like parties or swimming pools, movie theaters with no closed caption, and a host of other activities. We have all had a huge hand as to why this group of people have felt tremendously neglected socially from the long historical stigma created from pure ignorance. The medieval era was the time period where deaf and dumb had originally become a declaration. Even the Greek philosopher Aristotle felt that deaf people were incapable of being taught, of learning, and of reasoned thinking. To this way of his thinking, he felt that if a person could not use his or her words in the same way as hearing people, then there was no way that this person could develop any cognitive abilities. But actually, research debunks these claims, stating that being hearing impaired does not in any way stunt social or cognitive development in a deaf person, and they are just as socially mature and well adjusted as the hearing. ASL has allowed deaf people to value their language and the ability to not speak. Spoken English is typically useless to the deaf, along with reading lips, and we, the hearing, consistently forced into accommodate to our world, which isn't fair. There are countless struggles the hearing impaired encounter on a daily, but we, the hearing, continue to neglect and ignore these needs as long as we do not do anything to learn about their language and culture surrounding this group of people. We, as hearing people, can act upon our history of negligence by taking the proper steps to make our own accommodations to deaf people, starting with the education system. Implementing ASL in primary schools will not only be a great way to decrease language barriers between hearing people and the deaf community, but it also is picked up a lot quicker at a younger age. In fact, babies as young as 6 to 8 months can remember a sign, according to experts. By 8 months, children can begin to sign single words and imitate gestures, and by 24 months, children can sign compound words and full sentences. Signing at a young age would be a great way to tackle the bridge between hearing and deaf people early. We can also encourage one another to attend deaf events and social mixers. The goal is to engage in communication with one another as if there is no bridge at all between our worlds, and it all starts with normalizing our interactions with the deaf community, starting as early as possible. If you train up a child in a way he should, if you train up a child the way he should go, when he is old, he will not depart from it. Imagine how good you will feel the day you actually encounter a deaf person and you have the tools you need to have a full-blown conversation with them. You have had a hand in the normalization of the spread of the knowledge of the deaf community. Learning ASL will create a more positive aspect of society because everyone, hearing and hearing impaired, will have open opportunities to travel, work, and most importantly, socialize. If the positive effect on holding, I'm sorry, if the positive effect on building a more unified community isn't enough to persuade you to learn ASL, maybe this will. Learning more than one language can increase your wages. In fact, when you're bilingual, your earning potential can go up. If you are asked to be a translator or interpreter on the job, language differences typically range anywhere between 5 and 20% per hour on the base rate. Also, being bilingual helps with executive functions like problem solving, planning, and other mentally demanding tasks. Not to mention, hearing loss affects 48 million Americans, and that can develop at any age. Therefore, learning ASL will not be a wasted skill because you never know how it could directly affect you. Sorry, my screen. You never know how it could directly affect you. Um, I just lost my train of thought. You never know how it can directly affect you. Some may argue that if the language dies, deaf people can always resort to hearing aids to adjust to the hearing world. However, many people do not have the finances to afford hearing aids, um, and hearing aids can go anywhere from $900 to $3,500 per ear. And it's like, why force people to spend thousands of dollars when we can just learn a language for free? It is imperative that we learn ASL because if not, it could be a form of dying communication. Dwindling education funds like technological alternatives, hearing aids, things like that, are leaving the hearing impaired with nowhere to advance in their skill or culture. Learning ASL will benefit not only the hearing impaired, but also those who hear as well. All in all, there are so many benefits that can be reaped when you take the time to learn ASL. It makes for a much unified community and destroys any alienation created from the lack of knowledge, especially if we act quickly. If you would like to educate yourself further on how you can learn ASL and about the culture surrounding the hearing impaired, please visit the website of the National Association of the Deaf. Sorry. For me, I hadn't felt the obligation to learn the language until I saw the look on Amon's face. He didn't have to say a single word for me to feel the isolation and pain that we created. And I'm going to leave you with this quote. The deaf believe that there is nothing wrong, and the hearing believe that something needs to be fixed. That right there can tell you that there's a problem right there in the gap. And thank you for listening.